You're listening to Indigenous British Columbia, The Knowledge Keepers, a podcast journey led by the voices of First Peoples in conversation with journalist Pamela Post, your host of the Knowledge Keepers podcast.
Welcome to the Knowledge Keepers podcast. I'm Pamela Post in Vancouver, traditional lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. I'm German-Canadian on my mother's side and Tsimshian First Nations on my father's side. My dad grew up on the Skeena River near his traditional village of Kitsimkalem on the northwest coast of British Columbia. And it's my pleasure to take you with me on journeys throughout British Columbia to Indigenous places and people with stories to tell who are welcoming visitors from around the world to come and know their histories, their cultures, their lands, their way of being in the world. Today, journey with me to the beautiful Rocky Mountains of British Columbia to visit the Ktunaxa people, the name that Kootenai is derived from. The Ktunaxa have been in the region known as the Kootenays for over 12,000 years. Recently, I found myself nestled between a river and a lake with the Rocky Mountains looming above me. Flights of geese overhead were making their way south, and a paddock of horses ate grass contentedly while a village of teepees stood in the distance. I was taking part in an Indigenous immersion program at St. Eugene Resort outside Cranbrook, British Columbia. St. Eugene is an extraordinary story. It's housed in the former Kootenai Indian Residential School that ran from 1898 until its doors finally closed in 1970. After years of deliberation, the Ktunaxa people decided, instead of bulldozing a building that held deep scars of loss, abuse, and tragedy, they would reclaim its power and turn it into an engine of culture, income, and resilience for the Ktunaxa people. Barry West is the CEO of the now luxury resort, championship golf course, and casino that is housed at the former residential school. He is a key player in the new Indigenous immersion experience there called Hakaputninam, which means sharing our stories.
As a non-member of the Ktunaxa Nation, I'd like to say Husukik Kaknakani Kinwakak Ktunakak Amakas, which means welcome to the traditional lands of the Ktunaxa Nation.
He explains the goals of the new visitor experience.
To deliver the pre-contact experience as well as the history and the facts behind the residential school system, and finally the phoenix of modern business enterprises in the traditional knowledge and language sector who are the entrepreneurs behind this initiative.
Jared Tenise is one of those entrepreneurs. He and a team of Ktunaxa youth and elders have designed the experience.
It's an opportunity that's like no other. You know, to be able to claim one spot as what we did with this teepee camp is amazing. When it's one of our camps, you'll walk a path to it, and it'll bring you back 10,000 years to when we did it with, Mother Nature. And it's just an opportunity and just a life-changing experience for sure.
It was a powerful experience for me and the dozen or so others who took part in the program. After spending one night in the luxury and storied resort, the next day was on the land, playing traditional sports taught by an elder outside the teepees, spending time learning Ktunaxa arts and beading, and then that night after dinner, listening to creation stories told by an elder in front of a crackling fire under a star-filled sky, before bunking down to bed in a 24-foot-high traditional Ktunaxa teepee. The horses and a trio of deer greeted me as I got out of the teepee the next morning. I was definitely transported into a different time and place. But part of this experience is also an unflinching immersion into the dark history of St. Eugene. Ktunaxa archivist Margaret Tenise tells creation stories in the Interpretive Center.
Okay, so creation story. We have two creatures. The first one is Natmuksen. Now, Ktunaxa was so huge and so tall, if he stood up, he would hit his head in the ceiling of the sky and ultimately knock himself dead. So he had to basically crawl around, and as he crawled around, he carved out the valleys and the mountains that you see.
She describes the impact of contact, disease, colonization, the potlatch ban, and residential schools, like the one we're standing in. We watch a half-hour documentary made by former child survivors of the school and take a tour where Margaret shows us, among other things, the stairs she was charged with cleaning every day as a 6-year-old.
If I didn't do a good job, I had to do it all over again. So believe me, when I did these things...
On the week I visit, a special ceremony is happening. A statue of 2 children, representing all the children of residential schools, is unveiled outside the vine-covered brick walls of St. Eugene. A children's group sings and drums, and an elder, Herman Alpine, who is a child survivor of the school, greets the crowd.
A lot of mixed feelings about what's happening today, and hopefully that this will help on our journey as we go towards the healing part of it.
Former Chief Sophie Pierre of the Ktunaxa, also a survivor of the school, is also there to unveil the statue with her little granddaughter by her side.
So there is a story to tell. It is our story as Indigenous people, our story as Ktunaxa and all the other nations that came here, to tell our story of what it meant for us. But it is also very much a Canadian story, and it needs to be recognized as such.
The Indigenous experience is being called Speaking Earth, and it includes First Nations cuisine, outdoor experiences, and a visit to nearby Ainsworth Hot Springs. Jared Denise says he's proud to be inviting the world to share in a powerful story of Ktunaxa culture and strength.
Really, when it comes down to the residential school itself, the place itself, it's the pride. It's being able to see what we've turned it into, not what it was. This is the place that our culture and language should return. And how could it return when it's just a hotel or a casino or a golf course? To be able to put it into this light of rebirth is exciting. Absolutely exciting, and I'm proud to be a part of it, and I'm proud to see it, and the elders who've been a part of it, who've seen it, are in love with it, and was our goal.
It was a powerful trip that has stayed in my dreams, my heart, and my mind weeks later. Thanks for coming along with me on the Speaking Earth experience at St. Eugene Resort in Cranbrook, British Columbia, traditional land of the Ktunaxa people. You've been listening to Indigenous British Columbia, the Knowledge Keepers podcast. I'm Pamela Post. Join me again for our next podcast journey.